Hi everyone, Gundam here for a 45th and brand new episode of our special edition Lore of the Universal Century. Today we're going back again to the late UC in an attempt to answer a particular question, which is... Yep, in this video we are going to explore the history of the Xenomorph suit from Jupiter, its mechanical lore, variants, and extract every bit of mechanical knowledge we have on them so far. This video is brought to you through the request of my friend Joluka from our Discord server, so don't be shy to join our little UC bunker there. But let's start by the beginning. What is exactly the Erebado? Codenamed EMS-07, the Erebado, also nicknamed Batala Promotion Type or Royal Quad Unit, was a limited production space-use mobile suit, developed by the Jupiter Empire to serve as one of its highest performance models. A suit manufactured in direct succession of the EMS-06 Batala, mainstay mobile suit of the Jupiter Empire as of UC 133, the Erebado was a high mobility machine specially meant to be used by more valuable personnel, including field commanders, aces, and more importantly, the few royal guards sworn to defend Sir Crux Dogati, president of the Jupiter Empire. As such, the Erebado was a light departure from its parent suit the Batala, keeping most of its core design inherited from its mobile worker origins, while adopting costlier special equipments and features, with the goal being to transition from a quantity over quality design to a quality over quantity approach. To achieve this, the Erebado was outfitted with a certain number of innovative offensive equipments, which, coupled with exotic gimmicks, granted the Xenomorph-like suits rather remarkable abilities. As a primary offensive feature, the Erebado dished its left-hand manipulator unit for a special inbuilt equipment called Fighting Claw Unit, which combined 3 different weapons into a single arm. Amongst these weapons was notably a twin nails claw, a sharp weapon which special design enabled it to tear apart enemy suits in a single blow, and even inflict serious damage to a Gundam-type mobile suit. These claws were coupled with an inbuilt version of the beam saber, generated by a 4-port emitter, and which, combined with the claws, gave the Erebado superior versatility in close-range combat. Ice on the cake, the third mounted weapon, a heavy machine gun firing physical projectiles, enabled the Erebado to quickly switch to medium-range combat if need be, far quicker than any handled weapon could afford. Now, these fighting claw units actually became a terrifying asset when coupled with the Erebado's high mobility. Mobility granted by its 6-port shelf nozzles mounted on its backpack, a technology once pioneered by the Jupiter Empire own puppets during enemies, the Crossbone Vanguard. Through these additional propellant tanks equipped with micro verniers, the Erebado gained not only superior cruising range, but also far more precise and minute aimback, enabling it to use its armaments to precisely outmaneuver than outmatch the enemy. In parallel to these shelf nozzles on the Fighting Claw, the scuba-type headpiece used by the Batala was also swapped for a much costlier and effective head unit, characterized by a very elongated shape and forms very reminiscent of the infamous Xenomorph of the Alien movie. Far from being designed for intimidation purposes, this head unit used by the Erebado was actually designed following a flawed but functional philosophy, which considered that the head had to be the seat of most of the primary sensors, and so enlarging it as much as possible to pack as many of them as it could, in return providing the Erebado with superior sensor range and versatility than most of its enemies. According to the SD games, this large sensor head unit also somewhat granted the Erebado Ewok-like abilities, enabling it to perform well in electronic warfare, although to which degree is unknown. Unfortunately, this large headpiece exposing the special sensor through a glass cover, likely for a smoother interface dispersion, was also the most important design flaw of the Erebado as a whole, as bashing the cover would sadly result in all sensors being damaged at once, stunning the Erebado and rendering the suit dazzled, open to be destroyed. Aside this already handicapping flaw, the Erebado, despite its similar design to the cheaper Batala, was also seemingly a very expensive unit, which resulted in its production never exceeding 2 dozens of units, being stopped after the First Jovian War, notably with the Jupiter Empires and Republic preferring to dedicate resources to either cheap mass production models like the Arana or Nuevo Arana, or either to area dominance prototypes such as the Thukus series, ditching costly limited production machines such as the Erebado. Despite this, the model would remain rather popular and respected in the Jupiter sphere, with several surviving units serving as late as UC-170 being prized and cherished possession of the rogue faction known as the Jupiter Hawks. But that's enough setting for today, let's get to our lore. The story of the Erebado is murky to describe at best, with the earliest day of this particular mobile suit being tied to the many unknown factors brought by Crossbone Gundam, with its development date being an absolute mystery I'm going to solve for you. In fact, the early days of Jupiter mobile suits pioneered by the EMS-06 Batala are equally murky to the successor we are trying to cover, with no clear development date being detailed even for the mainstay Batala. Most Japanese forums tend to consider that the Batala, due to its miniaturized size and its original role as a mobile worker created to camouflage a war-capable mobile suit, was something akin to the DESA type of the Butch concern, and was thus a technology developed between UC-110 and UC-120, being used for 1 or 2 decades for asteroid mining alongside the mono-arm we saw in our earlier video, before being fielded as a combat-ready mobile suit during the events of Crossbone Gundam. The Erebado, as the EMS-07, so the direct successor of the Batala, was likely developed in those same years, although a fixed date anchor will be fixed thanks to some loopholes found in the lore, with a date set in UC-115. While the Erebado is mostly characterized by its alienish xenomorph design, the most interesting feature to examine and scramble its inner lore is actually its backpack-mounted mobility asset, the special equipment known as the Shelf Nozzle. For those who don't know, the Shelf Nozzles was an innovative technology pioneered and only used, Erebado put aside, by the Cosmo-Babylonia era Crossbone Vanguard, being a special equipment combining tubes, fuel tanks, purgeable parts, and micro-verniers to add micro-managed endback to any mobile suit making use of such nozzles, significantly enhancing their mobility and maneuverability. The Shelf Nozzle was notably well represented in the Crossbone Vanguard's Burga series, with the Burga Dallas developed in UC-117 making use of a 6-rack nozzle system as part of its standard loadout. The connection between Erebado and Shelf Nozzle-equipped Crossbone Vanguard mobile suits is something that was never much talked, even in underground Japanese sources, with the general stance assuming that the Erebado was a suit designed with the Burga series suits being used as a reference, a one-of-a-kind attempt from the Jupiter Empire to recycle a concept pioneered by the Crossbone Vanguard, but now abandoned after the Cosmo-Babylonia War. Yet a second origin could also be discussed, and is the one I'm going to personally support. What if, instead of being a suit based on Crossbone Vanguard models, like it is out lore, the Erebado was actually the original design introducing the Shelf Nozzles, with the Crossbone Vanguard mobile suits following a concept once pioneered by the Jupiter Guard model. This theory is supported by 4 different arguments, which I'm going to expose. First of all, when comparing the Shelf Nozzles of the Erebado and Crossbone Vanguard mobile suits, one can easily see that the Burga series nozzles are way more complex and modern than their Erebado counterparts, featuring a movable rack, a less brutish design, and also inbuilt beam weapons to use as a sort of beam rain funnel-like system. The Erebado definitely seemed way more primitive in its approach, and although this could be explained by different design philosophies, it could also indicate it is a design that predated the more advanced variation later introduced by the Crossbone Vanguard. Considering the Crossbone Vanguard later created more advanced shelf nozzles in the mid-UC 120s, the fin nozzles and the wing-type shelf nozzles, it wouldn't really make sense for the Jupiter Empire to craft its own nozzles on an already outdated design, while not exactly cheaper, unless it actually predated all the Crossbone Vanguard designs. The second argument is the late UC pyramid scheme when it comes to antagonists, with each faction being manipulated and sponsorized by a bigger hidden fish, until we reach the Jupiter Empire at the very top. In F90FF, most smaller Xeon remnants such as Legacy got handed over stuff such as the RF Camphor from their secret sponsor Mars Xeon, while Mars Xeon got themselves a beam shield for Rochester Gelgog and later some mobile suits from their own secret sponsor, the Crossbone Vanguard. Now we actually know that the Cosmo-Babylonia era Crossbone Vanguard was puppeteered by the Jupiter Empire from the shadows, a truth that Bera Rona uncovered and led her to help the Federation during the Cosmo-Babylonia War while setting up her own Crossbone subfaction to later confront the Jupiter Empire. With these schemes in mind, it would totally make sense for the Shelf Nozzle to have been a technology once crudely developed by Jupiter for the Erebado and later handed over to the Crossbone Vanguard as this sort of sponsor gift. The third argument supporting this is that the Erebado appears fairly early on during the Crossbone manga story, during the assault on the EO base, and yet get instantly recognized as the High Mobility Royal Guard type by the Crossbone Vanguard forces. Keep in mind, this happened at a point where the protagonists were still fairly often surprised when they came across new Jupiter Empire models, and before you ask, no, the entire Erebado production was stationed at the EO base, so this means that their first real and only possible encounter with this model was actually there. This seems to indicate that the Crossbone had at least data in their computers about these suits they had never seen and never could have seen elsewhere, data that helps them identify it as a high mobility and royal guard unit when the Erebado looks like neither. The theory that the Erebado and its Shelf Nozzle were a tech known by the Crossbone Vanguard as it was the own base of their own nozzle technology would definitely fill this plot hole and is now a lot more convincing. Fourth argument, which is this time Outlaw, Hasegawa definitely loves putting Jupiter as the Jerusalem of weird legacy technology, which means that with him having already retconned the beam rotor and Einerod origins as being Jupiter-inspired designs, I doubt he would pass the opportunity to also appropriate the Shelf Nozzles, with the Erebado being proclaimed as the original design introducing it in the timeline. With this murky situation set up and somehow fixed, let's try to move on. If we believe all these arguments, the Erebado would have been developed around UC 115, a few years before its data would be handed to the Crossbone Vanguard, thus making the Xenomorph suits the daddy of all burger-related models. Production-wise, we know that the Erebado was put to limited production, with a total of 24 units being spawned by the Jupiter Empire. These Erebados were seemingly produced from the same assembling lines that the Batala, with both suits sharing a certain number of armor parts and internal components, a standardization effort from the limited Jupiter Empire when it came to electronic resources. By UC 133, all these 24 Erebados were then assigned to the EO base, where the original biobrain of Cruz Dogati resided, serving alongside a fleet of Camaroni-class battleships and multiple Jovian mobile armors as the local garrisons want to protect this vital facility of the Jupiter Empire. The same year, the second coming of the Crossbone Vanguard, having launched their own crusade against the scheming Jupiter Empire, would launch an attack against the EO base, kickstarting a frontal assault at what they believed was the central base of their new Jovian enemy. During the battle, the Erebados would initially shine and show their high performance, easily smacking through the enemy Zondoge's mobile suits launched by the Crossbone Vanguard, gaining the upper hand in this initial mobile suit vs mobile suit brawl. However, this initial success would soon prove to have been a trickery, the Zondoges having all been set to automatic pilot, distracting the Erebados from noticing the assault of the Crossbone Gundams and the Mother Vanguard, which was managed to eventually break through the Camaroni ship's defense net, successfully taking control of the EO base. During the chaos that followed, most of these 24 Erebados were eventually shot down off-screen during the battle or the mop-off that followed, with only 2 out of the 24 units managing to survive and escape the EO base. Following the events of the EO base battle, the Erebado, with its decimated ranks, would not play further part in the First Jovian War, with its production not being renewed and the surviving 2 units being instead put to storage. Whether this was because of its failures at the EO base is not exactly certain, considering most sources seem to imply the Jupiter Empire instead didn't continue the production of the Erebado, similarly to the Wagon, not because of its flaws, but rather not to waste valuable resources on now inadequate models. Instead, funds were diverted to support the development of more adequate and modern suits like the Deathkill Trio that were specially designed to counter the Crossbone Vanguard's main asset, notably the Crossbone Gundam. Now, just because the Erebado wasn't produced anymore did not mean it was without impact in the development tree of newer Jupiter Empire models, with the Erebado considerably inspiring not one, but well over 3 other Jovian suits. The first of these was the abominable machine known as the Diona, a retrofitted form of the Batala designed to serve as a propaganda poster unit. Although the Diona was a suit meant to graciously fly around to boost morale and serve as a sort of pretty sculptor for internal propaganda, it was nonetheless designed to at least feature performance levels similar to the Erebado's, while being able to fit its same exact role as a Royal Guard unit. However, despite being somehow a Royal Guard, the Diona wasn't expected anymore to protect Sir Crux Dogati, being instead deployed alongside the LA Gorella, a large mobile armor manned by Crux' daughter, Princess Tetanive Dogati. Now, despite being a modified Batala, much like the Erebado itself, the Diona was also outfitted with the very same chef nozzles introduced in the Erebado, gaining similar maneuverability and mobility, although the Diona itself wasn't exactly designed to support real combat. Its head, sporting a decoration human face, was actually designed to support a large hidden cat eye mono-eye camera coupled with a large amount of inbuilt sensors, theorized to be derived from the remarkable sensors once used in the Erebado itself. Aside the Diona, the Erebado is also said to have considerably inspired a way more vital Jovian mobile suit, the machine known as the EMS VSX-2, also called the Abijo. A suit manufactured by diverting the pre-production version of the Arana, the Jupiter Empire future mass production model, the Abijo was one of these 3 suits created as part of the VSX project, a special plan aiming to create an anti-Crossbone Gundam squad composed of 3 different suits outclassing the Gundam, but only in a specific field each. The Abijo, with its extremely lightweight and 10 meters height, was designed to outclass the Crossbone Gundam only in the speed category, being a sort of small glass cannon capable of evading the Crossbone Gundam attacks while leaving the other 2 VSX suits, the Quavarze and Tortuga, to respectively handle the Gundam close-range abilities and tank its more powerful attacks. Now, to call the Abijo a glass cannon is a bit excessive considering it was more of an annoying Stinger bee than a real fragile suit with high offensive power. Indeed, the Abijo's main weapon was a needle gun, a small launcher firing physical darts, not enough to really damage the Crossbone Gundam, but instead distract it and cripple it over time by piercing it everywhere. The use of this needle gun was primarily supported by the Abijo glass-covered headpiece, stuffed with tracking sensors meant for high-speed combat, a technology that was supposedly directly based on the own glass head of the good old Erebado. Finally, the Abijo's cousin suit, its partner the Quavarze, also part of the VSX project, is sometimes said to be also linked to the Erebado, with its armor frame being seemingly directly developed on the Erebado's own frame. If this assumption is taken into consideration, this would mean that the Erebado is, through the Quavarze, the grandfather suit of the Cornix, the first antagonist suit used by the Callisto Shadow in Crossbone Steel 7, and well, quite a promotion I would say for a former Royal Guard inspired design. Before we end this video, I think it is time to discuss about the last 2 surviving Erebados, which have both appeared in the Crossbone X11 manga. These survivor suits would actually live through the rest of the early UC 130s, being safekept by Jupiter Empire nostalgic hardliners, the Jupiter Hawks, as precious relics of the bygone Jupiter Empire until UC 135. As the middle year of the 3rd decade of the late UC unfolded, these 2 suits would be dispatched to carry on an assassination attempt against Tobias Aronnax, the boy known to have killed Crux Dogati, but would end up being confronted by his girlfriend Tetanive Dogati, ironically, the very own daughter of Sir Crux Dogati, the man the Erebados were sworn to protect. Although the 2 Erebados initially mauled the Crossbone's culot due to Tetanive's inexperience in piloting mobile suits, putting it to severe disadvantage, the fight eventually turned tides when the princess managed to activate the heat radiation phase open, granting the Gundam a temporary boost to outmaneuver and destroy the two Erebados. The trump card of the Jupiter Hawks, Io, would eventually be unable to force herself to stab Tobiah, completely foiling the entire assassination plot. By UC 170, it seems the Erebado was still in use in the ranks of the Servants of Olympus, also linked to the Jupiter Hawks, with an Erebado painted in their custom colors being shown alongside their other units inside of Io memories, although it wasn't fielded to confront Tobiah and Io during the X11 final battle. And as such ended the story of the Erebado, the xenomorph that sneaked into the Universal Century. Oof! What a wild ride, wasn't definitely expecting to return to Jupiter Empire lore that soon after the Nautilus. If you enjoyed this video, you better leave some wacky comments and support the channel because this kind of stuff is the polar opposite of popular and rewarding content.
But who will survive?